I felt the exact moment my mate bond snapped. Tristan chose the altar of power over me, tossing his blind Omega aside because a broken boy couldn't help him rule. But he didn't know the dark glasses I wore hid the eyes of the lost prince he desperately needed. For the first 22 years of my life, the world was painted in shades of sound, touch, and scent. I lost my sight in a horrific car crash when I was 3, a crash that supposedly took my parents and landed me in the harsh reality of the state foster system. I grew up as Oliver Hayes, a quiet, unassuming Omega, who worked at a small independent botanical garden on the outskirts of Boston. I didn't have money, I didn't have a pedigree, and I certainly didn't have sight. But I had my independence. Then Tristan Crawford walked into my greenhouse, and my entire biological reality shattered. Tristan was the alpha heir to Crawford Pharmaceuticals, a multi-billion-dollar empire that practically owned the city's medical infrastructure. I didn't know that at first. All I knew was the sudden, intoxicating rush of his scent. It was like rain-slicked asphalt, crushed cedar, and something sharply electric like the air right before a thunderstorm. The moment he stepped near my orchids, my Omega instincts flared so violently, my knees nearly buckled. My own scent, which I had been told, smelled like vanilla bean, and white tea spiked, sweetening the humid air of the greenhouse. "You're my mate," he had whispered, his voice a low, gravelly baritone that sent a shiver down my spine. I could hear the expensive click of his leather shoes, the rustle of a bespoke suit. When he reached out and touched my cheek, a jolt of pure, predestined electricity sparked between us. For 3 months, it was a secret, intoxicating whirlwind. Tristan would pick me up in his private town car, taking me to secluded corners of the city, wrapping me in his expensive cashmere coats and whispering promises of forever. He was my alpha. My biology screamed it, and my heart foolishly believed it. But I should have paid closer attention to the tension in his voice whenever his phone rang with calls from the Crawford Board of Directors. I should have noticed that he never took me to public restaurants, only to private soundproofed VIP rooms at the Waldorf Astoria. The illusion violently shattered on a rainy Tuesday in November. He had summoned me to a private lounge at the Ritz-Carlton. I sat on the plush velvet sofa, my white cane folded neatly on the glass table before me. I expected the usual warmth of his greeting, the possessive nuzzle at my scent gland. Instead, the air in the room was suffocatingly bitter. His pheromones were sour, laced with stress and cold detachment. "Oliver," Tristan began, his voice devoid of the warmth I had grown to love, "we need to talk about reality." I frowned my hands nervously, finding the edge of my sweater. "Tristan, what's wrong? You smell distressed." "I am taking over as CEO of Crawford Pharmaceuticals next month," he said, pacing the floor. "My uncle is challenging my claim. He's rallying the board, claiming I don't have the stability or the alliances to lead a global empire. I need to present a united, powerful front. I need a mate who brings political and financial leverage." My breath hitched. The air in my lungs suddenly felt like shards of glass. "What are you saying?" He stopped pacing. I felt the heat of his body as he stood before me, but he didn't reach out. "I'm saying that a blind Omega from the foster system is a liability. The board won't respect you. The shareholders will see you as a weakness, a charity case I picked up. I cannot afford a disabled mate, Oliver. I'm marrying Felix Harrington next week. The Harrington banking family has the capital I need." The word struck me with the force of a physical blow. Felix Harrington, a high society beta known for his family's ruthless hedge funds. "But we're fated." I whispered, my voice trembling tears spilling hot and fast from my sightless eyes. "You're my alpha. You can't just rewrite biology for a CEO title." "I have to," Tristan said, his voice hardening into ice. "Power doesn't care about fate, Oliver, and neither do I. I've already contacted Dr. Aris Belmont. He specializes in bond-severing treatments. I've wired $1 million into an account for you. It's more than you'll ever need. Take the money. Get the treatments. Forget about me." "Tristan, please." I begged the Omega inside me, wailing in pure agony. A fated bond isn't just a romance. It is a neurological and spiritual tether. Rejecting it is akin to ripping out a vital organ. "It's done, Oliver." Tristan snapped his alpha aura, flaring with dominating cruel force. "I, Tristan Crawford, formally reject you, Oliver Hayes, as my mate." The rejection hit me like a freight train. A sickening, audible crack echoed in my chest. I screamed, clutching my heart, as agonizing pain ripped through my nervous system. I collapsed onto the floor of the Ritz-Carlton, gasping for air, my vision going from a peaceful dark to a flashing, agonizing red. Through the rushing sound of my own failing heartbeat, I heard the door click shut. Tristan had left me on the floor, broken and rejected, for a crown made of corporate greed. I woke up to the smell of sterile linen, medical-grade antiseptics, and the faint, expensive scent of fresh lilies. The agonizing burning in my chest had dulled to a hollow, throbbing ache. "He's awake. Inform the Chancellor." The voice didn't belong to any nurse I knew. It was crisp, authoritative, with a distinct, refined European accent. I tried to sit up, but a gentle, gloved hand pressed against my shoulder. "Easy, Your Highness. Your body has endured a massive neurological shock from the severed bond." I froze. "Your Highness, who? Where am I?" I rasped, my throat dry. "Am I at St. Jude's?" "You are in the private medical wing of the Kensington estate in New York," the voice replied. "I am Dr. Alistair Sterling. Apologies, Dr. Alistair Kensington, Chief Medical Officer to the Royal House of Astor. And you, my boy, are not Oliver Hayes." I reached for my eyes, instinctively feeling the familiar bandages they put on me when my eyes were light-sensitive during migraines. "I think you have the wrong Omega, Doctor. I'm an orphan." Footsteps approached, heavy-measured, echoing with authority. "You are an orphan, because the state failed you." A new, older voice boomed. "I am Chancellor Hastings of the Sovereign Duchy of Astor. 22 years ago, the convoy carrying the Crown Prince and his infant son was run off a cliff in a coordinated assassination attempt. The bodies of the bodyguards were burned beyond recognition and mistakenly identified as your parents. You, the infant prince, were thrown from the wreckage found by a passing motorist and placed blindly into the American foster system." My mind spun, struggling to process the information. That's a fairy tale. That's impossible." "We have spent 2 decades searching," Chancellor Hastings said gently. 2 weeks ago, your blood was drawn at the hospital when you were admitted for a severe panic attack. Routine genetic markers flagged a database match. We flew out immediately, only to find you had been admitted last night, suffering from bond rejection syndrome. A Crawford Alpha did this to you." The mention of Tristan's name sent a fresh wave of agony through my chest. But alongside the pain, a new emotion began to spark. Anger. "We ran the DNA tests 3 times, Dr. Kensington added softly. "You are Prince Leopold Arthur of the House of Astor, the sole surviving heir to the Astor Sovereign Wealth Fund, an empire worth hundreds of billions. Over the next month, my entire existence was dismantled and rebuilt. The recovery from the rejected bond was grueling. Without an alpha, an Omega's body goes into a defensive hibernation, but I refused to let Tristan Crawford be the reason I died. The Astor family surrounded me with the finest care money could buy. I was given a custom-crafted cane, its shaft made of black carbon fiber, with a subtle, diamond-encrusted handle. I was trained by royal tutors on how to walk, speak, and command a room without needing to see it. They taught me that a blind prince was not a weak prince. I learned to use my heightened hearing to detect lies in a person's heartbeat. I learned to read a room's power dynamics simply by the shift in scents. My vanilla and white tea pheromones, once soft and inviting, matured into something sharp, icy and untouchable under the immense stress and intensive medical care. Meanwhile, Chancellor Hastings kept me informed of the outside world. Tristan Crawford's grand plan was failing spectacularly. The Harrington boy he married is bleeding his company dry, Hastings read from a financial report as we sat in the sunroom of the estate. Felix Harrington pushed Crawford Pharmaceuticals to invest heavily in synthetic omega suppressants, but the FDA just rejected their primary patent. Crawford's stock has plummeted by 40%. Tristan's uncle is calling for an emergency board meeting to strip him of his CEO title. I sipped my Earl Grey tea, my sightless eyes fixed on the warmth of the sun coming through the window. What is Tristan's next move? Desperation. Hastings chuckled darkly. He is seeking a bailout, and there is only one entity with the liquid capital to save him before the quarterly review on Friday. He has requested an audience with the Astor family. He is attending our annual Sovereign Gala tomorrow night, hoping to beg the newly discovered lost prince for a lifeline. A slow, cold smile spread across my face. Tristan Crawford had thrown me away because I was a blind, powerless liability. He broke our fated bond because he believed I couldn't help him secure his empire. Approve his invitation? I said, my voice smooth and chillingly calm. Let him come to the gala. Let him present his proposal. Are you certain, Your Highness? Hastings asked. His scent may trigger a relapse of the bond trauma. I am certain, I replied, running my thumb over the diamond handle of my cane. Tristan wants to meet the royal who holds his fate in his hands. It would be rude to deny my former alpha an introduction. The night of the Sovereign Gala arrived draped in opulence. The Astor ballroom was a sensory overload of rich perfumes, roasting meats, and the hum of billionaires and diplomats. I stood on the balcony overlooking the grand staircase, dressed in a bespoke, midnight blue suit, tailored to perfection, a subtle platinum crest pinned to my lapel. My dark sunglasses shielded my scarred eyes, but I didn't need sight to know exactly when Tristan Crawford walked into the room. His scent hit me rain-slicked asphalt and cedar, but it was no longer the scent of a proud, untouchable alpha. It was spiked with the sour, acrid tang of pure desperation. I stood at the top of the sweeping marble staircase, the cool, polished stone, radiating a faint chill through the soles of my Italian leather Oxfords. Below me, the grand ballroom of the Astor estate hummed with the quiet, calculated murmurs of the world's elite. I could not see the glittering chandeliers, the cascading floral arrangements of white orchids and midnight roses, or the priceless silk gowns brushing against tailored tuxedos. But my heightened omega senses painted a picture far more vivid than sight ever could. The air was a complex tapestry of power, greed, ambition, and carefully masked desperation. I could smell the sharp tang of expensive champagne, the heavy, musky colognes of alphas puffing out their chests, and the subtle nervous sweat of those who knew they were out of their depth in this room. Chancellor Hastings stood steadfast by my right side, his presence a grounding anchor. He cleared his throat a sound that instantly cut through the low din of the ballroom. The string quartet, which had been playing a soft, sweeping waltz, brought their instruments to an abrupt, synchronized halt. The silence that followed was absolute, heavy with anticipation. "Ladies and gentlemen," Hastings's voice boomed, rich and commanding, echoing off the vaulted ceilings. "It is my profound honor to present to you the sole heir to the House of Astor, the sovereign of our estates, and the future of our legacy. I present His Royal Highness, Prince Leopold Arthur." A collective intake of breath rippled through the crowd. I gripped the diamond-encrusted handle of my carbon fiber cane, my knuckles turning white for just a fraction of a second before I forced my muscles to relax. I took my first step forward. Every footfall was deliberate, measured, and perfectly in sync with the soft tap of my cane against the marble stairs. I had spent agonizing weeks practicing this exact descent, learning to move not like a broken blind orphan from the foster system, but like a predator surveying his domain. As I moved, I deliberately released a fraction of my royal pheromones. The vanilla and white tea scent that had once been soft, submissive, and sweet was now laced with the piercing, icy authority of a high-born Omega who commanded respect. I could hear the alphas in the room subtly shifting on their feet, their biology recognizing a power that transcended traditional dynamic hierarchies. When I reached the bottom of the stairs, the crowd parted for me like the Red Sea. Hastings guided me toward the center of the room, stopping near a towering ice sculpture that radiated a freezing mist. "They are all looking at you, Your Highness," Hastings murmured softly, leaning in close so only my ears could catch the words. "And your target is approaching from 3 o'clock. He is moving fast. Desperation makes a man terribly indiscreet." I didn't need Hastings to tell me. I could already smell him. Tristan Crawford's scent pushed through the crowd, aggressive and cloying. The rain-slicked asphalt and crushed cedar that had once made my knees weak and my heart race now smelled deeply rotten, corrupted by the overwhelming stench of panic financial ruin and the bitter acidity of failing alpha pride. My chest gave a phantom throb, the ghost of the bond he had so callously shattered, but I ruthlessly crushed the sensation under a mountain of newfound resolve. I was no longer Oliver Hayes. Oliver was dead on the floor of the Ritz-Carlton. I was Leopold. "Your Highness," a voice said. The gravelly baritone that used to whisper sweet, empty promises into my ear now trembled with forced confidence. Tristan stopped about 3 feet away from me, strictly adhering to royal protocol, though his heavy breathing betrayed his frantic state of mind. "It is an absolute honor to make your acquaintance. I am Tristan Crawford, CEO of Crawford Pharmaceuticals." I slowly turned my head in his direction. Behind my dark designer sunglasses, my sightless eyes stared perfectly forward, giving away nothing. "Mr. Crawford." I replied, my voice smooth, cold, and utterly devoid of recognition. I pitched my tone perfectly, dropping the soft American lilt I had grown up with, and adopting the refined, razor-sharp enunciation my royal tutors had drilled into me. "I have heard your name circulating in the financial sectors recently, though I must admit the whispers have not been particularly flattering." Tristan swallowed hard. I could actually hear the dry click in his throat. "The markets are volatile, Your Highness," he said, attempting a charming chuckle that fell completely flat. "A temporary setback, a misunderstanding of our latest strategic pivots. That is precisely why I requested an audience with you tonight. Crawford Pharmaceuticals is on the precipice of a medical revolution, but we require a bridge loan. A partnership with the Astor Sovereign Wealth Fund would not only stabilize our current standing, but guarantee your estate a 30% yield within the fiscal year." I tilted my head, leaning both hands elegantly onto the handle of my cane. 30%. A bold promise from an alpha whose stock has plummeted 40% in a single quarter. I took a deliberate step closer to him, invading his personal space, just enough to make his instincts flare in confusion. My icy omega scent washed over him, and I heard his breathing hitch. Tell me, Mr. Crawford, I am a man who values stability. I invest in people, not just patents. Why should I trust a man who makes impulsive, ruinous decisions? I understand you recently married into the Harrington family. Felix Harrington, if I recall correctly. Tristan's heart rate spiked violently. The mention of his new beta husband filled the air between us with the foul scent of resentment. Yes, Your Highness. Felix and I were married a month ago. It was a highly strategic union. The Harrington banking sector offered substantial leverage. Strategic, I repeated, tasting the bitter word on my tongue. How incredibly clinical. And what of the rumors, Tristan? I dropped his title using his first name like a precision scalpel. The whispers in the elite medical communities say that you did not just marry for strategy. They say you forcibly severed a fated mate bond with an Omega to do so. A horrific, agonizing procedure that most civilized societies outlawed a century ago. Is this the kind of moral fortitude the CEO of Crawford Pharmaceuticals possesses? A heavy, suffocating silence fell over our immediate circle. Tristan's scent curdled into pure, unadulterated terror. He began to stammer, the smooth-talking corporate shark completely dissolving. Your Highness, that was a private matter. The Omega in question he was a liability, a nobody from the streets. He was completely blind, entirely helpless, and brought absolutely nothing to my empire. I had to make the difficult choice for the good of my legacy. A man in my position cannot afford to be chained to a broken thing. Fate is a biological glitch. Power is real. I made the necessary sacrifice to protect my company. The sheer audacity of his words, the cruel justification of my attempted murder, settled over me not with sorrow, but with a profound, terrifying calm. He had learned nothing. He was still the exact same monster who had left me screaming on the carpet of a hotel room. A broken thing, I whispered the words, slipping from my lips like poison. You believe a blind Omega is inherently worthless, that they cannot bring you power. Exactly, Your Highness, Tristan said eagerly, mistaking my quiet rage for agreement. I knew a royal of your standing would understand the brutal necessities of leadership. We must align ourselves with strength. If you authorize this bailout, I can ensure Crawford Pharmaceuticals remains an empire. I smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of an executioner stepping up to the block. I completely agree, Mr. Crawford, I said, softly reaching up with my free hand. A true leader must recognize when something is a liability and ruthlessly cut it away. My fingers grasped the edge of my dark sunglasses. With a swift, fluid motion, I pulled the dark glasses from my face and handed them smoothly to Chancellor Hastings. For the first time in weeks, the bright, ambient light of the chandeliers hit my scarred, sightless eyes. They were a pale, clouded, striking ice blue, marked by the faint, silvery traces of the childhood trauma that had stolen my vision. I lifted my chin, locking my blind gaze precisely on the spot where Tristan's frantic heartbeat pounded against his ribs. So, I commanded my voice, dropping the royal affectation and returning to the soft, familiar tone of the boy from the botanical garden. Look at me, Tristan. Look closely at the broken thing you threw away. The reaction was instantaneous and apocalyptic. Tristan let out a sound that was half gasp, half strangled sob. His heavy cologne could not mask the sudden, violent explosion of horrified realization that erupted from his scent glands. I heard him stumble backward, his leather shoes slipping frantically against the polished marble as if the floor had suddenly turned to ice. "Oliver." He breathed, his voice cracking into a high, pathetic pitch. "No. No, that's impossible. You're dead." Dr. Belmont said the bond severing was fatal. He said your heart gave out. My heart broke, Tristan. I corrected, softly stepping forward as he retreated. The entire ballroom had gone completely deathly still. The music had stopped. The elite crowd was watching the mighty CEO of Crawford Pharmaceuticals crumble before the blind prince. It broke because the alpha who swore to protect me chose a hedge fund over my life. But I didn't die. I survived the severing. And when I woke up, I found my real family. You're the prince, Tristan stammered, his breathing escalating into a full-blown panic attack. The biological backlash of realizing he had rejected a royal mate, a fated Omega of the highest conceivable pedigree, was ripping through his nervous system. Alphas are wired to protect and elevate their Omegas. To realize he had nearly killed a sovereign prince to marry a beta for money was breaking his mind in real time. "Oliver, please. My mate. My beautiful Omega, please. I didn't know." He lunged forward, falling to his knees before me. I felt his hands desperately grasping at the hem of my trousers. The moment his skin made contact with my clothing, a wave of revulsion violently churned in my stomach. "Do not touch me!" I roared, slamming the rubber tip of my cane down onto the marble with a resounding, echoing crack. The sheer force of my Omega command, laced with generations of royal authority, forced Tristan to snatch his hands back as if he had been burned. He stayed on his knees, weeping openly, the picture of a broken, desperate man. "Oliver, we can fix this," Tristan sobbed, looking up at me. "Dr. Belmont can reverse the severing. We can repair the bond. I'll divorce Felix tomorrow. I swear it. I love you. I always loved you. We are fated to rule together." We were fated. I corrected my tone, dropping to an absolute, freezing, absolute zero. "But you formally rejected me, Tristan. You stated for the record that power does not care about fate. And you were right." I turned my head slightly toward the crowd. "Where is Felix Harrington?" A nervous shuffle from the left side of the room. "I am here, Your Highness," a clipped, tight voice answered. "Felix." He smelled of bitter embarrassment and cold calculation. "Mr. Harrington." I addressed the unseen beta. "Your husband is currently on his knees, begging his former fated mate for a corporate bailout. Are you comfortable remaining legally bound to a man who would throw you away the moment his fortunes change?" "No, Your Highness," Felix replied instantly, his tone laced with disgust. "My legal team is already drawing up the annulment papers. The Harrington family formally withdraws all capital from Crawford Pharmaceuticals." Tristan wailed, burying his face in his hands. The last pillar of his empire had just collapsed. "As for your bailout, Mr. Crawford Auto, etc." I said, looking back down at the weeping alpha at my feet. "The House of Astor will indeed be investing in Crawford Pharmaceuticals. However, we do not invest in unstable, treacherous leadership." I gestured to Chancellor Hastings, who smoothly pulled a thick leather folio from his jacket. "Yesterday afternoon," I explained, "I authorized the Astor Sovereign Wealth Fund to quietly purchase all of Crawford Pharmaceuticals' outstanding debt. Every single defaulted loan, every missed payment, every leveraged asset. We bought it all. Which means, as of this morning, I personally own 82% of your company." Tristan's head snapped up. I could hear his jaw drop. You bought my company?" "I did." I confirmed, a dark sense of satisfaction settling deep into my bones. "And my first act as the majority shareholder was to restructure the executive board. I held a private meeting with your uncle, Richard Crawford. He presented a magnificent vision for the future of the company, one focused on actual medical advancement rather than aggressive suppression of Omega rights. He is a very reasonable man. In fact, he is standing right over there. I pointed my cane toward the right side of the room, though I didn't need to see to know Richard was there. His steady, satisfied alpha scent gave him away. "Tristan." Richard's voice rang out, heavy with grim finality. "As the newly appointed CEO of Crawford Pharmaceuticals, it is my duty to inform you that you are officially terminated. You will clear out your desk by tomorrow morning. Security will escort you from the premises." "No!" Tristan screamed, scrambling to his feet, but Astor Estate security guards already had him by the arms, their grips unyielding. "You can't do this. I am the heir. Oliver, please. You're my Omega. You can't let them do this to your Alpha. You ceased to be my Alpha the moment you walked out of the Ritz-Carlton," I said, turning my back on him. I slipped my dark sunglasses back onto my face, shielding the clouded eyes that he had once deemed a liability. "Escort Mr. Crawford off the grounds. If he attempts to contact me or step foot near the Astor Estate again, have him arrested for trespassing against the Crown. Oliver, please." Tristan's screams echoed through the grand ballroom, growing fainter and more pathetic as the guards dragged him toward the heavy oak doors. I'm sorry. The heavy doors slammed shut, cutting off his cries and sealing his fate forever. The silence in the ballroom was absolute, save for the crackling of the ice sculpture. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the clean, unburdened air of a life finally free from the shadows of my past. I adjusted the lapels of my suit, turned back to the crowd of stunned billionaires and diplomats, and offered a polite, practiced smile. "Now," I announced, my voice carrying the unshakable weight of my royal bloodline. I believe the string quartet was playing a waltz. "Let us enjoy the evening." The music resumed, and as I stood in the center of my new empire, I realized that while my eyes would never see the light again, my vision for the future had never been clearer. What an absolutely epic downfall. Tristan threw away his true fated mate for a pathetic grab at corporate power, only to realize he had rejected the most powerful Omega in the world. Leopold didn't just survive his heartbreak. He completely dismantled Tristan's empire and claimed the crown he deserved. Did you love this intense Omegaverse revenge story? Hit that like button, share this video with your friends who love a good plot twist, and subscribe for more incredible dramatic tales.